Shalom, y'all. I want to talk about Chanukah. Now, Chanukah is the festival of lights. We light the menorah. It starts on Tuesday. It's to commemorate the victory of the Maccabees over the Hellenists, the Seleucid Greeks, because a lot of people don't understand what was happening. And I want to go into a little about how the Hellenists were treating the Jews, how they were oppressing them, how they were forcing religion on them, how they were persecuting them, and what exactly they were breaking free from. And a lot of this I'm going to use the book of 2 Maccabees, where they told the story of what happened. 1 Maccabees does as well. But during Chanukah, when we light the menorah, this is what we're commemorating, the freedom from this. And let me just go into some of the things that were said. Now, Jason was a high priest. He bought the priesthood from the Greeks. He wasn't an actual high priest in Jewish custom, but they appointed him. The Greeks appointed him. And Jason thought Antiochus IV Epiphanes was dead. So, thinking Antiochus Epiphanes was dead, he made his move and he did a little revolt and found out that Antiochus Epiphanes was not dead. So this is what happened. When news of what had happened reached the king, he took it to mean that Judea was in revolt. So raging inwardly, he left Egypt and took the city by storm. And he commanded his soldiers to cut down relentlessly everyone they met and to slay those who went to the houses. Then there was killing of young and old, destruction of boys, women, and children, and slaughter of virgins and infants. Within the total of 3 days, 80,000 were destroyed, 40,000 in hand-to-hand fighting, and as many were sold into slavery as were slain. Not content with this, Antiochus dared to enter the most holy temple in all the world, guided by the high priest Menelaus, who had become a traitor both to the laws and to his country. He robs it and comes with another attack. In his malice towards the Jewish citizens, Antiochus and Apollonius, the captain of the missions, with an army of 22,000, and commanded him to slay all the grown men and to sell the women and boys as slaves. When this man arrived in Jerusalem, he pretended to be peaceably disposed and waited until the holy Sabbath day. Then, finding the Jews not at work, he ordered his men to parade under arms. He put to the sword all those who came out to see them, then rushed into the city with his armed men and killed great numbers of people. But Judas Maccabeus, with about 9 others, got away to the wilderness and kept himself and his companions alive in the mountains, as wild animals do. They continued to live on what they grew wild, so that they might not share in the defilement. Now, in front of the temple at Jerusalem, the holiest place in Israel, they had put a coliseum there to watch nude youth wrestle. And they did some other things it goes into. Not long after this, the king sent an Athenian senator to compel the Jews to forsake the laws of their fathers and cease to live by the laws of God, and also to pollute the temple in Jerusalem and call it the temple of Olympian Zeus, and to call the one in Gerizim the temple of Zeus, the friend of strangers, as did the people who dwelt in that place. Harsh and utterly grievous was the onslaught of evil, for the temple was filled with debauchery and reveling by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots and had intercourse with women within the sacred precincts, and besides brought in things for sacrifice that were unfit. The altar was covered with abominable offerings which were forbidden by the laws. A man could neither keep the Sabbath nor observe the feasts of the fathers, nor so much as confess himself to be a Jew. On the monthly celebration of the king's birthday, the Jews were taken under bitter constraint to partake of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Dionysus came, they were compelled to walk in the procession in honor of Dionysus, wearing wreaths of ivy. At the suggestion of Ptolemy, a decree was issued to the neighboring Greek cities that they should adopt the same policy towards the Jews and make them partake of the sacrifices, and should slay those who did not choose to change over to Greek customs. One could see, therefore, the misery that had come upon them. For example, 2 women were brought in for having circumcised their children. These women, they publicly paraded about the city with their babies hung at their breasts, then hurled them down headlong from the wall. Others who had assembled in the caves nearby to observe the seventh day secretly were betrayed to Philip and were all burned together, because their piety kept them from defending themselves in view of the regard for that most holy day. So then it goes on about how a mother and her 7 brothers were arrested for not eating pork, and they were taken and ripped to pieces and fried in pans in front of each other until the mother was finally killed. And of course, you know the story in 1 Maccabees. They had, of course, built this Colosseum where naked kids could wrestle in front of the temple. And then they tried to get Mattatyahu, a priest, a high priest, to sacrifice a pig to Zeus. And Mattatyahu wouldn't do it. So they sent a Jew that they had Hellenized up there to do it. And Mattatyahu killed him. And then said, all who believe in the Torah and in God, follow me. And they went up in the mountains and they met with the Maccabees. And they all came down and guerrilla warfare and eventually sent the Greeks running. And that is, of course, what we celebrate when we celebrate Chanukah. We celebrate being freed from this type of debauchery, from being freed from this type of immorality, from this type of persecution, and being able to celebrate our religion. It's basically the same story that's told several times over. The big joke is they tried to kill us, they didn't do it, we were saved, let's party. Yeah, but the things that happened to them, I mean, they were slaughtering people left and right, and when they finally decided to commit genocide against the Jews, the Maccabees rose up and fought against them and finally drove them out. Of course, that's really the story of Chanukah and why we celebrate it, why we commemorate the Maccabees, because the Hellenists had outlawed Judaism. They were trying to force Hellenism on the people. They were persecuting the people. They were killing them. They were selling them into slavery. And they had converted over some Jews. So it turned out to be a civil war. And of course, you know that Alexander the Great, as Max Demont and God, Jews, and History brought up, had sort of a rape campaign. When they would conquer a place, he would get his generals and his officers to take wives from the local women and sort of start instant Greek families right there. And that was his way of Hellenizing the conquered areas. And I don't know if they did that in Israel itself, but I know in Babylon they were horrible about that, and they raped and raped and raped and established a Greek society through that way. So it's entirely possible that they did it in Israel also. But when the Civil War happened and the revolt happened and they threw out the Greeks, a lot of the Hellenists had converted back to Judaism. There was a large influx. The more they persecuted the Jews, the more the Jews went back to Judaism. So the main thrust there was against the Seleucids, against the Hellenists, and not against the Jews. So it was more of a war than a civil war. But still, a lot of Jews were killed in the Civil War aspect of it. But the main thing is there was this outside force that was taking their right to religious freedom away from them, was persecuting them ruthlessly. And they broke free from that. And so we commemorate it today. Now, along those same lines, just a couple of days ago, somebody in Birmingham put a swastika and a couple of stars of David and the name of this little 17-year-old girl and some curse words against her in front of their family's home. It's a Jewish family, goes to our synagogue, in front of their home. The FBI has been called in to investigate. There is a history of anti-Semitism in that school system. This girl has had to change schools before because of anti-Semitism in that area. It is real. It is still real today. And when we light our menorahs and the light just brightens up the room and pushes back the darkness, that is a time to think of God and how one light, one little candle, one light can keep the darkness at bay, and how with God's help we will be able to keep the darkness at bay. And so this Hanukkah, I invite you to add your light to mine, to add your light to every Jew out there. And it doesn't matter if you're Christian or Muslim, you don't have to light a menorah. You just have to think. And on that first day, come together with us and think about God, however you envision God, and about doing good works, and about shining that light in your own life and keeping the darkness at bay. Chanukah Sameach. Happy Chanukah.